A shocking story out of the New York Times. It turns out Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the radical Iranian leader from back in the day who said we should wipe Israel off the map, is working with Israel. Wait, what? What in the world is going on here? Well, Elliot's gonna tell you the story, and then I have a theory to add on top of the story as to what actually happened here.
Excellent.
Interesting, so tell us, Elliot.
All right, well, as you might recall, so earlier this year, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Mossad convinced Donald Trump that if they waged war in Iran, then they could inspire a popular revolution that would then topple Iran's current regime, and they could be replaced with a pro-Western leader. So it has been widely assumed that Reza Pahlavi, former Iranian crown prince, is who Israel and the US would install as Iran's new leader, but that is not the case. We have learned that Israel has spent years turning Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Iran's former president, into their asset. Ahmadinejad governed as a hardliner who called for the eradication of Israel and even presided over mass executions of Iranian descendants. But after he left office, Ahmadinejad transformed into more of a moderate. This is at least partly because Iran's rulers would not let Ahmadinejad run for president again. Ahmadinejad told a handful of his closest associates and confidants about his ambitions to become Iran's future leader with the help of foreign powers, according to an associate in his close circle who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private discussions. Ahmadinejad became disillusioned with the Islamic Republic system after he was disqualified to run for president 3 times, the associate said, and concluded that he could not ascend to power as long as the current system remained in place. Israeli intelligence agencies were closely following the brewing rift between Ahmadinejad and the Iranian regime during this period, according to 2 Israeli defense officials familiar with intelligence assessments at that time. Ahmadinejad was reportedly going to recognize Israel if installed as president. It's also currently unknown when the Mossad first contacted Ahmadinejad. However, it is alleged that Ahmadinejad met with the Israelis in 2023, and the New York Times confirmed that Ahmadinejad met with the Israelis in 2024 and in 2025. What's even more stunning, though, than the scheme itself is how the whole thing just completely fell apart. This is per the Times. On February 28th, an Israeli airstrike hit Ahmadinejad's compound, targeting the building of his bodyguards and his armored vehicle. After the strike, according to 4 senior Iranian officials, a black Peugeot car arrived, picked up Ahmadinejad, and whisked him away at high speed from the chaotic scene. American and Iranian officials with knowledge of the operation said the car had been driven by Mossad operatives who took Ahmadinejad to a secret safe house in Iran. But the former Iranian leader was upset about the frantic rescue operation, and he appeared to be disillusioned about the Israeli plan to return him to power, according to people with knowledge of what occurred. Ahmadinejad is reportedly now under house arrest for conspiring with the Israelis. All of this seems like a pretty insane revelation. Cenk, I want to know what your theory is here.
Yeah, so wait a minute. This guy who said let's wipe Israel off the map, the Holocaust never happened, and they cracked down on dissidents, and all of a sudden would recognize Israel and would be totally pro-Israel. Now look, the official story is, oh, he was disillusioned, and because he wanted power, he decided that he was going to change all of his views overnight and go with the Israelis, and somehow that would help. Like, yes, the Israelis could install him as their puppet, right? And then he would probably crack down on dissidents a billion times more, etc. So that's the official story, because the Israelis saw an opening when he was disillusioned, and then they reached out to him at that point, right? Here's my story, my guess, my theory. No, he was working with the Israelis the whole time, and that's why they reached out to him now, and we're all puzzled by that, but they thought it was the most logical thing because he'd been their guy on the inside the entire time. In fact, that's why he was disqualified from some of the elections, because the Iranians caught on to the fact that he was working with the Israelis and had him under house arrest because they thought he was working with the Israelis. Now, why would the Israelis want a leader of Iran saying that to wipe them off the map? Well, because Netanyahu and the Israeli government has been trying to get us to attack Iran for the last 30 years. Now, we've shown those clips over and over again on the show where Netanyahu comes in and says, they're weeks away from a bomb. We've got to attack them now. He says that Yes, back in 2005, 2010, 2013, the whole time Ahmadinejad is in charge. So Netanyahu is saying, oh, they're building a bomb. And then conveniently, here comes Ahmadinejad saying, oh, I like denying the Holocaust. That's so random, right? That's like, to me, I remember when he said that, I was like, is this for an American audience? Because like nobody in Iran cares about that. They care about the current situation, right? That's like a conspiracy theory about how the Holocaust didn't happen. That's again kind of relevant in these circles. In Iran, they don't like Israel anyway, and they don't like. It just seems so out of place. And so Elliot in the Mossad had bragged about how they were among the protesters in this round, right? And they said we're in the streets with you, and we showed those. I don't know why they said it in public, but they did. And then. So that was in the beginning, before the second round of attacks on Iran. Now there's the new pro-Iranian regime marches. And in those, I believe Mossad was again in the streets. So they're saying kill Trump. That makes, I get it, right? We killed their leaders. They want to kill Iran, Trump. Could that be organic? Sure, of course that could be organic from people who are upset in Iran. But then they had signs saying kill Ben Shapiro and Laura Loomer. I'm like, they know them in Iran? That's a weird sign, right? And then they had a sign that said kill Miriam Adelson. Like, they know the funders? They know the AIPAC funding list? And then they had a sign saying kill Mark Dubowitz, a neocon no one's ever heard of. I'm like, oh, it's Mossad doing the signs, right? So now, but that gives you their mindset. They think that everybody knows what they know. They love Mark Dubowitz, so they assume the Iranians would want to kill Mark Dubowitz, who they've never even heard of, right? So they think, oh, I bet those conspiracy theorist anti-Semites would deny the Holocaust. So they're like, hey, Ahmadinejad, deny the Holocaust, right? And in the West, that'll make people really angry, right? So it doesn't affect anybody in Iran, but in the West, oh, how dare he deny the Holocaust, right? And say you're gonna wipe us off the map. You're an existential danger to us, so America has to attack you. The other night I was scrolling through Shop TYT, as I'm sure you were, when I saw our awesome Banned in the UK shirt. And I thought, I need that, I definitely need it. I clicked add to cart, I'm ready to dig out my wallet, but it's on the other side of the room. But right there in the checkout, glowing like a beacon, is that glorious purple Shop Pay button. One tap, boom, order placed. That's the magic of Shopify, the platform behind millions of businesses and 10% of US e-commerce, including our own Shop TYT. That purple Shop Pay button is the best converting checkout on the planet. It means fewer abandoned carts and more actual sales. If you run a business, Shopify makes it super simple to build a beautiful site with hundreds of templates and a blast email and social campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling. It's like having a full marketing team behind you. So do what we did, use Shopify. See fewer carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TYT. That's shopify.com/TYT. So if you wanted to attack Iran, you would want a leader who says the most outrageous things, both about Israel and America, and that's exactly what Ahmadinejad did.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I mean, it sounds plausible, because when I was reading the New York Times article, I was like, how does a leader make that kind of a 180 simply because he's angry at the Iran leaders? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I understand if you have like a family member who changes their mind about a particular issue, but you're talking about a leader who is doing one of the most dramatic shifts in their opinion ever, and all of a sudden it's just, and then he's all this, and then he just decides, actually I'm freaked out by this and I'm not going to do it. And I know that in my mind with a lot of this stuff, I assume that there's a level of like, this stuff is closed down, they know exactly what they're going to do. They thinking about this from every possible angle. And then they freak Ahmadinejad out and he just drops out of it and now he's on house arrest. So I think what you're saying does make sense, and it at least makes a little more sense of that New York Times article.
Yeah, one last thing on it, guys. So think about it. The New York Times says that what's more plausible is that this guy went from hating Israel and wanting to destroy it to wanting to be their loyal servant and do whatever they want in Iran. Okay, so that's one theory, and I would call that the conspiracy theory, right? The other theory is, what did Israel want from Ahmadinejad when he was in charge? to seem like a crazed radical who we had to get under control militarily, otherwise Israel and America would be endangered, right? And he would say the most anti-American things back then. That's what Israel wanted back then. What do they want now, or when the war began? They want him to be a puppet who's for regime change and then support Israel afterwards. Oh, well, that's a more plausible theory, because in both of the instances, a guy who we now know was definitively working with the Israelis and was an agent for Mossad gave them exactly what they wanted in both of those circumstances. And Elliot, super last thing on it is, it's amazing to me that all the New York Times reporters who wrote this story, that never even occurred to them.
Yeah.
They're like, that's amazing, the most miraculous turnaround. And you're like, well, put a couple of thoughts behind it. If he's a Mossad agent now, are you sure he wasn't a Mossad agent before? And they're like, oh, no, they couldn't be. Because, okay, actually I said super duper last thing. So guys, because a lot of our establishment puts out this message, whether they believe it, and I think a lot of them do believe it, or they don't, but they put out the message like anything where that doesn't match the official government story is a crazy, ludicrous conspiracy theory, right? But what, you're saying the Israelis that killed 23,000 children in Gaza, that having, and already flipped Ahmadinejad at this point and would have him serve as a puppet, as the New York Times now acknowledges, having him serve as a puppet earlier is out of bounds, unthinkable? Why would that be unthinkable, right? And then like the idea that they're like, and Israel doing like operations inside America, unthinkable. How could it be unthinkable? They already stole our nuclear secrets. They also already stole our uranium, our nuclear triggers, and all of our top secrets. How could it be unthinkable? So wait a minute, I'm beginning to wonder, whose side are you on? And that's exactly why I've been saying what I am about corporate media, because come on. On the other hand, look, credit where credit is due, fairest show in America, good piece by the New York Times. At least they are revealing that Ahmadinejad is a Mossad agent. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.